June 12, 1944, Corentin, Normandy, France. The hedgerows were alive with fire. The air was thick, choking, a stew of cordite, diesel fumes, and wet earth. Daniel Carter's M4 Sherman lurched forward, its tracks grinding mud and snapping roots, when the sudden metallic shriek of a ricochet rang out. A Panzer IV shell had glanced off their frontal armor, leaving a smoking scar across the glassy plate. Inside the tank, the world was a furnace. The Continental R-975 radial engine roared behind them, its heat pressing against their backs. Sweat dripped into Daniel's eyes, stinging, mixing with the acrid stench of gunpowder. The loader's hands trembled as he tried to ram a 75mm shell into the breech. The casing stuck. Panic spread like wildfire. "Jam!" the loader shouted, voice cracking. The German MG-42s outside rattled like chainsaws, their rounds tearing through hedgerow leaves, snapping branches, and pinging against the Sherman's hull. The radio hissed with static. No orders, no guidance, just the chaos of battle. Daniel's heart hammered. He reached forward, shoving the loader aside, flipping the shell orientation in his hands. His backwards method, mocked in training, slid the round into the breech with a clean metallic click. The gun was live again. Target, Panzer, 11 o'clock. Red Mallory barked, sweat dripping from his helmet strap. The gunner swung the turret, gears grinding, the M70 sight catching the silhouette of the Panzer's turret turning toward them. The German barrel was already lowering, black and hungry. The Sherman's cannon thundered, recoil slamming through the steel beast. The round streaked across the foggy field, smashing into the Panzer's side armor. A bloom of fire erupted, smoke curling upward. But another shadow loomed, another Panzer, advancing fast, its engine growling like a predator. The loader fumbled again. Daniel's hands moved instinctively, reversing the shell, chambering it in seconds. His crew stared, wide-eyed, as the impossible rhythm unfolded. The Panzer's turret locked onto them. The German barrel was steady, aimed directly at their heart. The world froze. Before we continue this unbelievable story, make sure to subscribe, because what happens next will leave you breathless. The roar of battle faded into memory, replaced by the hum of cicadas in the Ohio summer. Long before the hedgerows of Normandy, Daniel Carter's world was the flat farmland outside Springfield, Ohio, where the smell of cut hay and machine oil mingled in the air. His father, Thomas Carter, worked 12-hour shifts at the International Harvester plant, forging steel parts for tractors and combines. He came home with hands blackened by grease, his shirt stiff with sweat, and yet he always found time to teach Daniel the language of machines. "Listen to the rhythm," he would say, placing Daniel's small hand against the side of an engine. "Every machine has a heartbeat. If you hear it skip, you know something's wrong." Daniel absorbed those lessons like scripture. By age 12, he could strip down a tractor carburetor blindfolded, guided only by touch and sound. His mother, Margaret, a schoolteacher, balanced this mechanical obsession with discipline and books. She filled his evenings with stories of men who stood firm when history demanded it. Farmers turned soldiers, ordinary men who became extraordinary. But tragedy struck when Daniel was 16. His older brother, William, was crushed in a factory accident when a hydraulic press jammed and then released without warning. The sound of the machine's fatal snap haunted Daniel. At the funeral, he whispered a vow over the coffin, "No machine will ever decide life or death for me again." That vow shaped him. In the barn, he experimented endlessly, reversing loading sequences, flipping parts, finding ways to prevent jams. His friends mocked him, calling him Reverse Danny. Even his rival, Frank Doyle, sneered, "You'll break something one day, Carter." But Daniel's closest friend, James "Red" Mallory, believed in him. Red saw the determination in Daniel's eyes, the refusal to accept failure. By 1942, the world was at war. Posters lined the streets, urging men to enlist. Factories thundered with production, and Springfield's plant shifted from tractors to war machines. Daniel felt destiny pressing on him. When the draft notice arrived, folded crisp in the mailbox, he stared at it with a mix of dread and resolve. The cicadas hummed louder that day, as if echoing the rhythm of a machine's heartbeat. Daniel folded the letter, tucked it into his pocket, and whispered to himself, This is where the vow begins. The next morning, he boarded a bus bound for Fort Knox, leaving behind the fields, the barn, and the grave of his brother. His life as Reverse Danny was about to collide with the steel monsters of war. And somewhere in the distance, the thunder of tanks was already waiting. The bus rattled into Fort Knox, Kentucky, its windows streaked with dust, carrying Daniel Carter and dozens of other recruits into the heart of America's armored training grounds. The sprawling base smelled of oil, sweat, and gunpowder. Rows of M4 Sherman tanks gleamed under the sun, their olive-drab paint chipped from endless drills. Daniel's first encounter with the Sherman was overwhelming. The tank loomed like a steel beast, its 75mm M3 gun protruding forward, its tracks heavy with mud. He ran his hand across the cold armor, feeling the weight of destiny pressing down. The instructors barked orders, drilling them in every aspect, stripping the M1 Garand, setting up the Browning M1919, and learning the delicate balance of teamwork inside a tank. Inside the Sherman, the air was suffocating. The gunner's seat was cramped, the loader's station cluttered with shells stacked in racks. Daniel's hands instinctively reversed the orientation of a shell during practice. The round slid in smoother, faster. But Sergeant Frank Doyle noticed. "Carter." Doyle's voice was sharp. "What the hell are you doing? That's backwards." The other recruits laughed, their voices echoing in the steel hull. Daniel's cheeks burned, but he didn't stop. He chambered the round, the breech locking with a clean snap. Red Mallory, seated beside him, gave a subtle nod of approval. Days turned into weeks. They drilled in mud, rain, and blistering heat. The Sherman's engine roared, its recoil slammed through their bones. Daniel's method shaved seconds off reloads, but the ridicule never ceased. Doyle mocked him at every opportunity, calling him Reverse Danny. Yet Daniel's resolve hardened. He remembered his brother's death, the crushing weight of that jammed press. He swore silently, "Machines will obey me, not betray me." One evening, after a grueling live-fire exercise, Daniel sat alone on the tank's hull, the smell of burnt powder lingering in the air. Red joined him, tossing a helmet aside. "You know they'll never believe you until it saves their lives," Red said quietly. Daniel stared at the horizon, where the sun bled into the Kentucky hills. "Then I'll wait for the day it does." The next morning, orders arrived. Europe awaited. The men gathered in the mess hall, silence heavy as the officer read their deployment. Doyle smirked at Daniel, whispering, "Let's see if your backwards tricks work against real Panzers." Daniel clenched his fists. The laughter of Fort Knox would soon meet the fire of Normandy. The Liberty ship groaned as it cut through the gray swells of the North Atlantic. Its steel hull shuddered with every wave, the smell of salt water mixing with diesel exhaust and the faint tang of rust. Daniel Carter stood on the deck, his helmet strapped tight against his chin, staring at the endless horizon. The ocean seemed to stretch forever, a cold reminder of how far from Ohio he had traveled. Below deck, the air was thick and suffocating. The cargo hold was packed with crates of ammunition, spare tank parts, and the personal gear of hundreds of soldiers. The constant hum of the engines reverberated through the steel walls, rattling mess tins and shaking bunks. Men tried to sleep, but the rocking of the ship and the gnawing fear of U-boats kept them awake. Daniel carried his vow with him. In the dim light of the cargo bay, he practiced his backwards loading method with dummy shells, sliding them into a makeshift breech he had cobbled together from spare parts. Red Mallory watched, arms crossed, a grin tugging at his lips. "You're obsessed," Red said. "But maybe obsession's what keeps us alive." Above them, the ship's klaxons suddenly wailed. The sound tore through the steel corridors, shrill and urgent. Men scrambled, boots pounding against the deck. "Submarine contact," someone shouted. The fear was instant, electric. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. He remembered his brother's accident, the crushing inevitability of a machine gone wrong. He whispered to himself, "Not this time. Not ever again." The ship lurched violently as depth charges thundered into the sea. The explosions rolled through the hull, shaking every bolt and rivet. The lights flickered, men clutched their helmets, prayers whispered into the chaos. Daniel gripped the railing, knuckles white, heart hammering. The ocean roared back, black and endless. Somewhere beneath the waves, a predator hunted them. And then, silence. The Liberty ship had delivered them into hell. By June 1944, the beaches of Normandy were already scarred with wreckage, the air heavy with smoke and the stench of death. Daniel Carter's Sherman rolled off the landing craft, its track sinking into the thick French mud. Rain fell in sheets, soaking uniforms, turning boots into lead weights. The hedgerows were the enemy's ally. Dense walls of earth and tangled roots blocked visibility, forcing tanks into narrow lanes where German ambushes waited. The Sherman's Continental R-975 engine growled as Daniel's crew pushed forward, every vibration rattling their bones. Inside, the air was suffocating, diesel fumes, sweat, and the metallic tang of gunpowder. Their first combat came suddenly. A Panzer IV emerged from behind a hedgerow, its long-barreled 75mm KWK-40 gun already trained on them. The German shell screamed past, exploding in the mud just feet away. The shockwaves slammed against the Sherman's hull, showering the crew with dirt and debris. "Load!" Red Mallory barked, voice sharp over the roar. The loader's hands shook, fumbling with the shell. It jammed halfway into the breech. Panic surged. Daniel shoved forward, flipping the round in his hands, sliding it in with his backwards method. The breech locked with a clean metallic snap. Fire! The Sherman's cannon thundered. The recoil slammed through the steel beast, rattling teeth and bones. The round struck the Panzer's side armor, punching through. Flames erupted, smoke curling into the rain. The German crew scrambled, shadows in firelight. But victory was fleeting. Through the mist, a darker silhouette emerged. A Panther tank, its sloped armor glistening with rain, its 75mm KW-42 gun far deadlier than the Panzer's. The Panther's engine growled, its turret turning with predatory precision. Inside the Sherman, silence fell for a heartbeat. Daniel's crew stared at the looming shadow. The Panther was faster, stronger, and its gun could pierce their armor like paper. Daniel's hands tightened on the shell. His vow echoed in his mind, "No machine will ever decide life or death for me again." The Panther's barrel lowered, steady, unyielding. The rain had turned the hedgerows into rivers of mud, each step and track sinking deeper into the mire. Daniel Carter's Sherman sat crouched in the ditch, its engine rumbling like a caged beast. The crew's breaths came fast, fogging the cramped interior. Outside, the silhouette of the Panther tank loomed, its sloped armor gleaming wet under the gray sky. "Panther, dead ahead." Red Mallory's voice cracked through the din. The Sherman's gunner swung the turret, gears grinding, but the Panther was already moving with predatory grace. Its KWK-42L/70 gun lowered, steady, precise. One shot from that weapon could punch through their armor like paper. The radio hissed static. No orders. No reinforcements. Just the sound of distant artillery and the relentless chatter of MG-42s stitching the hedgerows. Inside the tank, panic clawed at the crew. The loader's hands shook, fumbling with the shell. Sweat dripped into his eyes, mixing with the acrid stench of oil and cordite. Daniel shoved forward, his vow echoing in his mind, "No machine will ever decide life or death for me again." He flipped the shell, chambered it backwards, the breech locking with a clean metallic snap. The gunner fired. The Sherman's cannon roared, recoil slamming through their bones. The round struck the Panther's frontal armor, and bounced. Sparks flew, smoke curled, but the German tank kept advancing. "Didn't penetrate," the gunner shouted, voice trembling. Daniel's mind raced. He remembered his father's words, "Every machine has a heartbeat. Listen to it." He listened now, not to the Sherman, but to the battlefield. The Panther's engine growled, its tracks grinding mud. It was advancing too fast, too confident. "Smoke!" Daniel barked. The crew fired smoke grenades, white plumes billowing across the hedgerow. Visibility dropped to nothing. The Panther's silhouette blurred, its turret searching. Daniel seized the moment. Hard left. Use the ditch. The driver slammed the controls, the Sherman lurching sideways, mud spraying. The tank groaned, steel grinding against earth, but it slid into cover. Through the smoke, the Panther fired. The shell screamed past, exploding against the hedgerow, showering dirt and leaves. The shock wave rattled the Sherman, but they were alive. Daniel's heart hammered. He chambered another round, his backwards method shaving precious seconds. The gunner aimed for the Panther's flank, where the armor was weaker. The smoke thinned. The Panther's turret swung, black barrel locking onto them. And then, a deeper rumble. A shadow larger, heavier, more terrifying emerged from the mist. The Tiger I. Its massive 88mm KWK-36 gun pointed directly at them, a weapon infamous for tearing Shermans apart in a single shot. Inside the Sherman, silence fell. The crew stared, frozen. The impossible problem had arrived. The hedgerows shook with thunder. Daniel Carter's Sherman crouched in the mud, its engine growling, its crew frozen as the Tiger I loomed ahead. The massive 88mm KWK-36 gun was already lowering, black barrel steady, promising annihilation. Tiger! Red Mallory's voice cracked, raw with fear. The Sherman's gunner swung the turret, gears grinding, sweat dripping down his temple. The loader's hands trembled, fumbling with the shell. Daniel shoved forward, flipping the round in his hands, chambering it with his backwards method. The breech locked with a clean metallic snap. Fire! The Sherman's cannon roared, recoil slamming through their bones. The round streaked across the foggy field, smashing into the Tiger's side armor. Sparks flew, smoke curled, but the beast kept advancing. Then chaos erupted. A Panzer IV broke through the hedgerow to their right, its gun barking. The shell screamed past, exploding against the mud. Another silhouette appeared, a Panther, its sloped armor glistening with rain. The Germans were converging, steel predators circling. Daniel's mind raced. He chambered another round, his backwards rhythm shaving seconds. The gunner fired. The Sherman's cannon thundered again, striking the Panzer IV. Flames erupted, smoke billowing. One down. The Panther fired. The shell slammed into the Sherman's side, denting armor, shaking the crew. The smell of burning paint filled the air. Daniel chambered another round, faster than thought. The gunner fired. The Panther's flank shattered, fire consuming it. 2 down. The Tiger roared, its 88mm gun firing. The shell screamed past, exploding against the hedgerow, showering dirt and leaves. Daniel's heart hammered. He chambered another round, his backwards method saving precious seconds. The gunner fired. The round struck the Tiger's track, sparks flying. The beast lurched, immobilized. Another Panzer IV appeared, its gun barking. The Sherman's cannon thundered, recoil slamming through steel. The round punched through, flames erupting. 3 down. The loader's hands shook, sweat dripping. Daniel shoved forward, chambering another round. The gunner fired. The Tiger's turret exploded, fire consuming it. 4 down. The final Panther emerged, its gun lowering. Daniel chambered the last round, his backwards rhythm flawless. The Sherman's cannon roared. The round struck true, fire blooming. 5 down. 6 minutes. 5 Panzers destroyed. The battlefield fell silent, smoke curling into the rain. The crew stared, disbelief etched into their faces. Doyle, watching from another Sherman, was frozen, his mockery silenced. Daniel's hands trembled, sweat dripping, heart pounding. His vow had carried them through. His backwards method had saved their lives. But the smoke hid unknown threats. Shadows moved in the mist. The silence was not peace, it was the pause before the next storm. The battlefield was silent now, save for the hiss of rain on scorched earth. Smoke curled from the wrecks of 5 German tanks, their twisted hulks glowing faintly in the drizzle. The hedgerows, once alive with gunfire, stood scarred and broken, branches splintered, roots torn from the soil. Inside Daniel Carter's Sherman, the air was heavy with the smell of burnt powder and sweat. The crew sat in stunned silence, their ears ringing, their bodies trembling from the recoil of 6 minutes of hell. Red Mallory leaned back against the steel wall, helmet tilted, eyes wide. 5 Panzers, in 6 minutes, he whispered, disbelief etched into every syllable. Outside, medics moved through the mud, tending to the wounded. A ruined French village lay beyond the hedgerows, stone walls shattered, roofs collapsed, windows blown out. Civilians emerged cautiously, faces pale, eyes hollow. They looked at the Sherman not as a machine, but as salvation. Sergeant Frank Doyle approached, his boots sinking into the muck. For the first time, his voice carried no mockery. He stared at Daniel, then at the smoking wrecks. "I was wrong," Doyle said quietly. "Your backwards trick, it saved us all." Daniel's hands trembled as he removed his helmet. He thought of Springfield, of his father's lessons, his mother's stories, and his brother's grave. The vow he had whispered years ago had carried him here, through fire and steel. Machines had not betrayed him, they had obeyed him. Red Mallory placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Your brother would be proud," he said. Daniel looked at the burning hulks, the smoke rising into the gray sky. The world had mocked his backwards method. But in the mud of Normandy, it had become the only way forward. The rain fell harder, washing blood into the soil, carrying whispers of sacrifice into the earth. The silence was haunting, heavy with the weight of lives saved and lives lost. And as the smoke thinned, Daniel Carter realized that history would remember not the laughter, but the vow. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and switch on the notification bell. Share it so others remember the men who saw differently, and the vow that turned ridicule into survival.